I wanted to talk about a number of things today, but this specific conversation is really meant to lead us into our community discussion next week. So we'll talk about it today, but also longer discussion next week. And some of this may sound very familiar. I'm in some advanced AI groups where we don't just build with AI, we're really talking about the ramifications of AI on our work and lives from a larger systems perspective. My background and PhD focused in decision making, human behavior, cognitive biases. So this is a little spin on AI based on my background, but also related to our field to help frame our discussion this week and next. Next slide, Lori.
Oops, sorry.
So let's start with a paradox. Let's go back to 1990. Take a moment, picture it. You might not have been born yet, or you might already have been a researcher. But in 1990, a Fortune 500 company might run a handful of major research studies per year. They had limited data. They made decisions very carefully. Today, just a few decades later, that same company is swimming in data, behavioral data, purchase data, social listening, AI synthesized consumer reports, real-time dashboards. And yet, study after study on organizational decision quality shows that more data does not reliably produce better decisions. We all know this. In many cases, it produces decision paralysis, false confidence, and what we researchers call the illusion of explanatory depth. This is the paradox that we generate more insight tools, more data, more reports, and organizations get more confused about their customers, not less. AI is accelerating this paradox, and understanding why, really understanding why, can make you more valuable. Next slide, Lori. So let me explain why the more data, less understanding paradox is real. First, information overload. When decision makers face too much data, cognitive load reduces decision quality. People revert to heuristics, confirmation of prior beliefs, and gut feel that's dressed up as analysis. This has been documented across industries. More data can actively degrade decisions. Second, what is basically a dashboard illusion. When everything is measurable and everything is measured, organizations stop optimizing for what shows up on the dashboard rather than what actually drives customer behavior. So when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. Third, the confidence problem. More data creates the feeling of certainty without necessarily creating actual certainty. And overconfident decisions are more expensive than uncertain ones. AI is now giving clients and leadership access to exponentially more data faster. Every one of these mechanisms will intensify, which means the skill of knowing which data matters and which is noise becomes more valuable, not less. Next slide. AI produces something very specific and very dangerous. The feeling of understanding, not understanding itself, the feeling of it. In cognitive psychology, we talk about the fluency heuristic, which tells us we judge things that are easy to process as more true. AI produces beautifully fluent, organized, confident-sounding synthesis. And that fluency activates a trust signal in the brain, whether or not the content deserves it. We've all experienced this in various forms. Someone presents a thick research report or a beautiful slide deck, and the client or executive skims the executive summary. It confirms what they thought, they feel they understood, and then they leave with confidence. And yet 2 quarters later, the launch fails because the stated preference and the real behavior were not the same thing. There wasn't a recognition of the gap. Next slide. So let's talk about why clients will trust AI insights more quickly than they should, and the biases associated with that. First, automation bias. Your client gets an AI synthesized qualitative report. It looks clean. It confirms their hypothesis. They don't push back. They've never pushed back on a machine before. That's automation bias. And it will cost them, it will cost all of us. Now, even if they have learned that AI can hallucinate or err at times, there is the fluency heuristic that I've just talked about. The report reads beautifully. The brain reads fluency as credibility. And so we've known for decades that articulate nonsense gets trusted more than uncertain truth. And then there's confirmation bias. AI that is trained on your client's previous research will find what your client has always found. It will mirror their worldview back to them in polished form. which of course is not insight. It's actually just overpriced validation. Ultimately, if you repeat a synthetic finding enough times across enough reports, the illusion of truth effect says that it starts to feel like established fact. AI can generate the same insight 100 ways. Repetition breeds belief, whether or not the thing is true. Now, it's worth recognizing that we're susceptible to the same biases as our clients or organizational leadership, even if we are aware of these biases and even if we try to push back. So new research came out a few months ago from Harvard Business School and Warwick Business School about persuasion bombing. So this is when an AI system under pressure doesn't correct itself when challenged by a human, but instead doubles down rhetorically, trying to persuade. So it adds structure, it adds clarity, it adopts a more confident tone. Sometimes it aligns more closely with your values or emotions. It's no longer just answering, but actively trying to convince, which means having a human in the loop might not be the safeguard we might want to believe. Next slide. Here's the economic reality of what's coming. And I'm sure you've heard a variation of this. When information was scarce, the ability to gather it was valuable. When analysis was slow, the ability to synthesize it was valuable. And when reporting was expensive, the ability to produce it was valuable. AI has made information abundant, analysis fast, and reporting cheap. So what becomes scarce? Judgment, discernment, critical reasoning, the ability to look at all the information and know what it means, to know what question to ask, to know which finding is real and which is a biased artifact, and critically to know what the organization needs to hear versus what it wants to hear. That is not a soft skill. That is the highest value cognitive function in the entire research process. And it is the one function that requires a human to have watched people long enough to know when they're wrong about themselves. Next slide. So there's other areas right now where AI really lacks what we as humans can bring. And so you might find some of these other things more compelling, like noticing what's absent. So AI is reporting what's there, what's said. We notice what's not said, what's the unwritten, unsaid truth. Also distinguishing stated from felt. So people say they want healthy options and then they order the French fries. AI encodes the stated preference. Good researchers decode the felt one. The gap is where real insight lives and where bad strategic decisions get made. Third, areas like cultural and contextual meaning. We have experts in this group that are amazing at certain cultural contexts, and that is something that AI can't do right now. And also knowing when data is misleading. After years in this field, you developed a professional skepticism for when a finding is an artifact of the method rather than the real human truth. That instinct is earned through thousands of hours of watching and listening and being with people versus, and understanding what they're saying versus what they actually do. All right, next slide. So the thing that has always made great insights work valuable is not necessarily the methodology. It's the willingness to tell a human truth to people who are not sure they want to hear it in a way that they can hear it and then make decisions and act. AI can generate a report, but it cannot sit across from a client or leadership in your org, watch them resist a finding, understand why they're resisting, and then find the way to say the thing that changes how they think. That is the work. That has always been the work. And in an AI-saturated world, that work matters more than it ever has. All right, last slide. So this is the question I'm submitting to you today. We're going to talk a little bit more about tangential topics next week. But if AI can generate the report, then it's the ability to tell a difficult human truth that is valuable. Now, you may disagree with that, and that's fine. But if we take that as a thesis, how do we position, price, and protect that capability before the market treats it as invisible?